There was a soldier, a Scottish soldier, and his name was Roddy Piper, and he lived in a pit. And he would do a podcast from a pit. My goodness, how you all doing today? Hope you got a smile on your face. This is another Piper's Pit. I never know who's going to come through the door. I have my producer, Raymond, that just keeps me right on top of things. And I got my guy, my handler here, Julian, and they're poking me in the right directions and, telling me what I'm supposed to say and don't miss this and don't miss that, and, Then I get to talking and I forget it all. I got a dandy guest for you this week. Holy cow. Last week, we had Vince Russo and, looking in hindsight 2020, I think it was a great piece of business. One of the things that was asked of me, people always got different angles or different opinions, or they call them haters. I don't give anybody that power, because you got to understand this. I'm a heel, okay? My job in life was to make you hate me. So you got to understand something. When what they call a hater comes along, I don't even notice it. I'm so used to it. Like, boo, boo. Oh, I'm at home. I feel much better now. So, but anyway, one of the guys says, how could you have Russo on there, just for ratings, somebody like that, and talk about Owen Hart, and, well, just wait a second. Just hang on a second. Did you watch the OJ trial? Huh? Got a lot of ratings, I'm sure. But the point of the matter was that there was some old business that needed to be cleaned up. And instead of doing it just one-on-one, let's do it in front of God and everybody, where everybody can take a look, and then they see the authenticity in it. And so, that's my answer to that. I won't compromise. You know what? My honor, it's not for sale. There's nothing. No amount of money will buy my honor. Of course, you can buy everything else about me. It's all for sale. I'm coming up January 23rd. I'll be on, don't tell anybody this now, okay? It's a secret. Undercover boss. All out of bubblegum. You tell me. Again, I got to claim it. First wrestler to ever have a soda pop named after him. Roddy Piper's all out of bubblegum soda pop. You can get it at Rocket Fizz. You can get it at Bevmo. You can get it best at RoddyPiper.com. You can get it autographed. You can get it hot. You can get it cold. You can get it poured. Shaken, not stirred. You can get it. I have an actual bubble gum that is coming out with it, and it's delicious. I made them put extra fizz in the soda pop, the Rocket Fizz people. Like, I like the fizz a lot. And so they ended up dumping 3 cases off for me to try. And like about 3 days, I drank all the cases. It was great. Good stuff. Good bubble gum. There's a lot of stuff going on. I try not to get... we have Jim Cornette coming up, as you know, but I try not to get too political. You'll never hear me talk about a political candidate. I've never voted in my life. I've never had the right to vote. I'm not from this country, and the country that I'm really, I'm from the world. I think this is a concept. I've always been a little bit ahead of the game, the arc. Unfortunately, sometimes that makes me look badass crazy. But people, it won't be long before people will say, "Where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from the world." "Oh, I'm from Mars." "Nice to meet you." I'm not from any place in particular. I don't have a hometown. I can tell you where I was born, but I haven't been back there since I was 4 years old. I can tell you many towns that I lived in. Kind of a little bit of a rough go of it, but God's got a plan, I guess. So I'm just from the world. I don't have the racial tensions and stuff like that. That's not instilled in me. I got all the faults in the world. Okay, I'm not trying, but I'm saying that like I had nothing to do with slavery. I had nothing to do. That's not in my culture. Okay, I'm not. Yeah, in Canada, those damn Indians that used to beat me up. Now those guys, FBI, friggin' big Indians. But I just make I'm looking around and 214 was a tough year in America. Greatest country in the world. Canada, greatest country in the world. And then, somebody like executes 2 policemen. And again, I don't comment politically because I don't have the I don't have the right answer for you. So if I give you an idea and you go with it, that's pretty irresponsible on my part. So I'm just going to want to say this gently because I understand. I don't like getting pulled over by policemen. I don't know anybody that does. But you can't go shooting policemen. I just kind of put it. Come on, whoa, can't do that. We're gonna have. I know Hell's Angels, some good men in that club. I suppose they could police America, or have the Taliban come over and police America. I'm honored to be here, and I'll get off it, but I'll just go like, hey, bottom line, everybody gets carried away. Certainly I do. I have. Can't kill policemen. Stop it. But we need to fix it. We're moving on. So I'm going to be an undercover boss. What if I was like chief of police in New York? No, I'd have a blast, man. I would have so much fun. Rod, cop for a day. Oh, baby Jesus. Tell me where Vince is. All right, drop him. Cough. I've got a graphic. My producer's going, get him off the air. Get the hook. The show hasn't started yet. Got Jim Cornette. Just a second. Hang on, no. I got the coolest graphic novel you've ever seen. And it's ready to go. And the cover is hand-drawn by a guy named Joe Jutko, who is like one of the top drawers in the world that did the cover of mine. It's called Rowdy Roddy Piper, Monster Killer. And I've been killing monsters my whole life. It's my day job. And you can get that at rowdyroddypiper.com. You can get the villain t-shirts. You can get all of the bubble gum. It's a one-stop shop. You go to rowdyroddypiper.com. You need help, you send something to rowdypiper.com, and I'll reach out to you if I can. I try to help, try to say hey. It's world's getting smaller. We got to start getting along just a little bit. This is coming from the greatest villain in the history of my sport, which in other words is I'm just the biggest asshole they could find. With that said, I'm going to come back, and when I come back, I'm going to have the Right Honorable Jim Cornette with me. So I got to take a break. Go to rowdyroddypiper.com. I got a little girl I'm trying to get through school, and I'll fight anybody that wants to for money. We'll be right back with Jim Cornette. I love you. Yeah. When you go to sleep, I'm what's under your bed. Holy cow. Well, I'll tell you, if you had asked back in 1979 who would be here in 2015, I would have been the dark horse, that's for sure. Welcome back to Piper's Pit. Holy cow, bagpipes make me either want to. In this particular podcast, I can say it. The true saying is bagpipes either want to make me fight or fuck. I want to warn you that this particular podcast is for sailors and and guys that got enough balls to get in there. I'm pretty blessed, man. We had Vince Russo on, and it was interesting. Last couple, like last year, we had Carpenter, we had Bobcat Goldthwait. We talked about Robin Williams, talked about a lot of different things. The gentleman I have here, and I'm honored to have this man on. And just before I go anywhere with it, I want to fill you in on what I'm thinking. I maybe have spent 3 minutes with this next gentleman. In time actually sitting down. This is something I forgot. I've asked about him, and there's a lot of people of high standing that says he's got one of the better minds or one of the great minds of our business contemporarily. Now that's quite a, okay, I know, here comes the ego. You tell Roddy Piper that somebody's got a great mind for the business, I want to speak to that gentleman. But at the same time, it's not like he just talks about it. He went and did it in many, many places. And so, and he actually, one of the small perks of being where I am in the business is somebody of this kind of talent that I'm about to introduce to you would have the respect to reach out to me when he doesn't need to. He doesn't need this podcast. He's doing this as a favor and as almost like a token of thank you. So I said, man, baby, bring it all guns blazing. So without further ado, and bagpipes, I don't know what you're doing over there. Oh, someone's fighting. Well, that leaves only one other thing. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to what people say is one of the greatest minds in the business of professional wrestling contemporarily, Mr. Jim Cornette. Hello, Jim. Are you there?
Yow! Hot Rod, I'm here. I'm here, and what's more, I couldn't turn down your invitation because I've been scared of you for 35 years. Do you want me to tell you why?
Why?
Because the first time I ever saw you was in the Cincinnati Gardens in 1980.
Whoa.
When Jim Crockett Promotions came up from Charlotte, started running Cincinnati, and I was just a fan at that point. I was a ringside photographer in Louisville, Kentucky, but I bought a ticket to come up to see the big stars of Jim Crockett Promotions.
Holy cow.
And I was sitting in a 12th row ringside back on the aisleway, and you're headed toward the ring, and some guy out of the audience tackles you. He came guns blazing, as you said, and he hopped on top of you, and you turned around. You guys went down to the floor, and from my vantage point, all I could see was your fist going up and down like the piston of an engine. And then the next thing I saw, the security was carrying him out, and he was twitching. He looked like he had some kind of palsy going on because you put him into a convulsion.
That's funny, bro. I was scared to death. Jim, in that arena, I don't know if it might have been that night. There's the mayor of Cincinnati wanted to give away 2 awards, and I was wrestling Hogan, and we were stripped down. I just had my boots and a towel around. We're getting ready to go, and it's intermission, and so I'm going, what are you talking about? Hogan goes out there, and the mayor, I got to make it up. Mayor goes, for the most wonderful guy in the world, there you go. And so they want Piper to come out. And so I got a towel, and, I'm busy. I got to figure out how I'm going to pull this big bastard around the ring for the next 20 minutes. And,
wait a minute, you got Hogan to go 20 minutes?
Well, there's a slight exaggeration, excuse me. And so I come out, and the mayor goes, I'm making it up again. For the worst, dirtiest, rottenest. And I'm watching this guy, and he keeps going. So I took the towel from around my neck, and I started beating the mayor on the head. You know what his name was? Jerry Springer.
Oh my God, that's right. Springer was the mayor of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I started the Jerry Springer show kind of a way. So is that where you first kind of come in your life to with the Jim Crockett Promotions in Cincinnati? And is that where you first are introduced to wrestling, Jim?
Well, no, actually, I'm from Louisville, which is just 90 miles down the road.
Yeah.
And I started watching TV here in Louisville out of the Memphis territory, Jerry Jarrett's promotion, and then I got to be the ringside photographer when I was about 14 years old, and a fill-in ring announcer, and taking all the pictures for the merchandise table and writing the programs and the gopher type of, the drill.
Sure I do. And who was this for at that time? I'm sorry.
For Jerry Jarrett out of the Memphis territory.
He's a good man.
Louisville was in a great place because not only did we have matches every week here on Tuesday nights at the Louisville Gardens, but also I was an hour and a half from Cincinnati. I could see the Sheik's stuff in the 70s, and I was 2 hours from Indianapolis. I could see Dick the Bruiser, and then Crockett came into Cincinnati, and then finally in '82. I got into business and started traveling around to the different territories, but I was a big fan from the time I was like 9 years old.
But you know what's interesting about just when you tell me that is, so you're checking out Mid-Atlantic coming to Cincinnati, and then like you're checking out Verne's. So like there's two similar styles, but like you get down to Louisville, and I don't know, just lovingly used to call the Tennessee Two Shuffle. It's a completely different way of performing, and definitely different than what Verne Gagne was doing, and definitely different from what Charlotte was doing. So you had you had kind of like a mixture that you were working for at the time.
Well,
it could have been a great education.
That was the great thing about the wrestling territories in the 70s and 80s is that everywhere you went, it was a different style of work and a different style of performance and different talent that did different things. And that's how the guys learned. They would travel from territory to territory and work with all these great veterans and learn different things. You in Los Angeles for LaBelle and Don Owen in Portland, and you got such a well-rounded education, and now everything's so cookie cutter because everybody tries to do the same thing.
But Jimmy, and I want to go there. It's really I'll tell you I'm going to say this because I say it with all the love in the world. I hear you're a mama's boy, and Mama used to take you to the match, or at least watch the matches with you at home. Is that true?
Actually, that's how I got my gimmick, because when Jerry Jarrett finally, he said, hey, have you ever thought about being a manager? Well, no, I never thought I'd get the chance. But, of course, I say yes. Anytime you get asked a question by the promoter, you say yes, right?
Can you parachute special forces?
Yes, I can hang glide, I can rappel. But when I started working for Christine Jarrett, Jerry's mother was the local promoter in Louisville. She took care of his business. And when I started working for her, I was too young to have a driver's license.
Gotcha.
So my mom would drive me to the matches, and then they got to be friends, and my mom started selling the pictures that I would take at the merchandise stand. And so the people had seen me and my mom together, and so Jerry Jarrett says, hey, Playboy Gary Hart had a rich mother, and that got him in the business. But I didn't fit the Playboy part, but I could carry off the rich little putz part. So
gotcha. But you
just be the rich little putz.
But I love, because see, my boy Colt, he's a mama's boy, and like he's an undefeated amateur MMA fighter. And when he was a little boy, like 6, I'd say, "You're a mama's boy." And one time he got like real sad. I says, "What's wrong, Colt?" He says, "Well, I don't know what to say to that." I say, "Call me a mama's boy." He says, "You're a mama's boy." I say, "Yeah, you got a problem with that?" And to this day, MMA, and I would assume you're the same way. I didn't have folks, so I'm kind of jealous. And like, what a wonderful mama, and what a wonderful experience it must have been for you too.
Not only that, and not only has she passed away in 2002, but not only did she support me getting into professional wrestling, but she put up with at least her name, Mama Cornette, being used as part of my gimmick. And to this day, she is the most famous pro wrestling personality that never appeared at a show, never did a promo, never appeared on television, and was never interviewed by anybody.
That's beautiful.
She was that personage that was always talked about but was never seen, and
taking care of her.
So many fans all over the world that when they heard that she'd passed away, we got like thousands of letters and emails and et cetera. And that really, I've still got a book of them.
So it's in your blood.
A binder of them.
It's in your blood. I'm not, I'm just getting to know each other here, trying, where you're coming from. It's in your blood with your mommy. It's like I can see you have a love for it. You have a sincere love, don't you, for wrestling?
Well, like I said, I have since I was 9 years old, and I've always been interested in not only the personalities. It's a unique American art form. It's the most unique performance art that this country has ever spawned, I think, and it's gone around the world. And I've always tried to preserve it and preserve the history of it. That's why I write the books and I do the interviews and I write the magazine columns, because these stories of these great, colorful, unique personalities. You can't let that stuff die and be mowed over by corporate America and homogenized and sanitized and pasteurized for your protection, like the wrapper on the toilet seat at the Super 8, you know.
I know exactly where you're going, and I'm going to go there with you. I want to just, for the fans out there, and they love you. By the way, I said your name on Twitter, and it's like, geez, and it's like Obama. They love, you know. Man, you know,
I don't know. I think my approval rating may be a little bit better these days. But, you know.
Good one. You're doing the magazine, you're taking pictures, and you mentioned a man, Jerry Jarrett. Now, Jerry Jarrett, for those who don't know, when Vince McMahon and WWF in '91, there was some controversy, and Vince and myself and Hogan were in it, and Vince
thought he was going to be Borden with the Warden.
There you go, and he called Jerry to come up and run his business. That's I don't know that you can get a much better compliment for Jerry Jarrett than that.
Yeah, well, you know,
the man knows the business.
He had it in his blood because his mother, like I said, Christine, the one that started me, she actually started selling tickets at a shoe store, which was the ticket outlet for the Nashville wrestling office in the 40s.
Wow.
And she then had become the head secretary and then had become a town promoter and probably the most successful woman that ever promoted in a male-dominated business. And you can call Ann Gunkel, and we don't want to call Dixie Carter. Nobody wants to call Dixie. But
that's a shot. That was a shot.
Bam.
So now, all right, now, you so you got it from you get your background from Jerry Jarrett. Did I see a Nick Goulas? Did you work for Nick Goulas?
You know, I watched the TV shows when I was a kid. I never got to work for Nick. But
Whoosh.
You know, there's some legendary stories.
Tough piece of work, baby.
I heard actually that the people, you know, top stars used to go into Nick's territory. They'd come in a $30,000 Cadillac and leave on a $60,000 Greyhound. So it was really, you know.
That's about it. Yeah, tough piece of work there. Okay, so I was thinking that was a bit before your time. So now, you get in the business as a manager. Who's the first guy? How did you get there? Tell me that. Just when did you first? Okay, I'm doing this now.
They threw me in the deep end of the pool because the way that I started was that I was trying to sign because Jimmy Hart, you know Jimmy, Jimbo Poo-Poo. Yeah. Jimmy Hart was the top manager in Memphis, and of course he was an evil, bad guy, and Jerry Jarrett said, you would want to manage the good guys. You would want to manage the heroes, and then when they tell you that you're nothing but a clueless putz, then you'll have a reason to switch heels. So I tried to manage, you know, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, and finally Dutch Mantell agreed to sign with me, and he was the first guy I managed. And that lasted a week until I cost him a Southern Heavyweight Championship match against Jerry Lawler in the Mid-South Coliseum, and Dutch came out on TV the next week and tore up the contract and said, I wasn't above taking you for a ride for some money, Cornette, but you're an idiot.
So you just got a real cushy start, huh?
Yeah. So then I was trying to get even with all these guys that had made fun of me. And,
sure.
And one of the guys I first managed really in Memphis for a long period of time was somebody, I'm sure you know, the exotic Adrian Street.
Oh, baby Jesus. Holy cow. So that was like one of your first guys, and you lived.
Yeah.
You lived in
Adrian,
everything.
He was great because, you know, he was the son of a Welsh coal miner, and he was a shooter.
Yeah.
And he had trained in England and, you know, not only shooting and hooking, but that world of sport style.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but he had the, you know, like the Mark Bolan T-Rex. I don't know if you're into glam rock from the 70s, but he had that kind of, you know, appearance. And so he really was such a veteran. He taught me a lot. And then I went through a number of people. And then finally, about a year and 2 months into things, I got my big break to go work for Bill Watts in Mid-South Wrestling with the Midnight Express.
With the Midnight Express. Those are good boys.
Yeah, you know, Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, where I'd known them from Memphis. They were both wrestling there at the time, and Watts came down and did a talent trade with Jerry Jarrett.
Gotcha.
and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express go to Louisiana, and Jarrett got some guys from Watts in return, and
so
in
they
1984.
Yeah, go ahead, 84.
84. That was the biggest year that Bill Watts ever had financially as a promoter, and I was lucky enough to be featured. I'm 22 years old, and I'm main eventing the Superdome, managing the Midnight Express against Bill Watts and Junkyard Dog. And
nice.
it just,
Yeah.
after that, as you know, when you draw promoter money, Roddy, you can write your own ticket.
You know what? Yeah, the rule books goes out the window.
Yeah.
Now, I remember who was it? I think the grappler, Len Denton. I don't know if he was around Oklahoma at that time. But you're talking about the Junkyard Dog. They'd say all the boys were back there, and the crowd be going, "Who gonna beat that? Who gonna beat that Junkyard Dog?
Oh, yeah,
who gonna beat that?" And then here comes poor Ted DiBiase, right?
Oh, DiBiase had to leave the New Orleans building in the trunk of Grizzly Smith's car whenever he screwed the Junkyard Dog over. And I know Lenny, by the way, Len Denton. I actually in Memphis, when he first put the mask on, I got a chance to manage him for just a brief period of time, and I just saw him last September down in Fort Worth at a Legends event. And
good man.
He's doing great, and of course,
cool.
He had a big influence on Chael Sonnen, who stole all his material.
Yes. So now you're with the Rock and Roll Express, and you're there with Watts. Now that's a whole different education that you're getting. You see, you know how I came up. So I'm going, you got Jarrett, you got Watts. I know the different philosophies. I know what they're doing. And you got the Tennessee Two Shuffle, yet you've got the Double Bridge from Mid-Atlantic. That's quite a, that's more information than most guys. I went to, here's one. I used to go to UCLA when I was about 18, 19. You go to Melnick Hall in UCLA, and reel to reel, they had Gorgeous George, Baron Leone, Stan Lane, from all the stuff from about 56 to 61, and I'd go frame by frame, Warren Bockwinkel, boom, and I would watch them and what they did frame by frame, because it was such another school, and I was learning, but you were getting the same education, but from three different schools. That's really interesting.
Oh, God, and, when you worked for Bill Watts, and, his television cameras were scared of him. They wouldn't break down. They were afraid they'd, if you watched, and Ted DiBiase told me one time, he said, I spent a year and a half straight in Mid-South Wrestling. My hair started falling out, and I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I had to leave, but it was the greatest year and a half of my life because I learned everything about the wrestling business.
Brutal. I heard Oklahoma brutal.
If the roads were brutal, the fans were brutal, the riots were brutal, but if you watched and you could learn how to book, you could learn how to format television, you learned, and the crowds were just insane.
How are the Rock and Roll Express? How are they in the riot situations?
Well, I just saw Ricky Morton last weekend in South Carolina, as a matter of fact, and we were talking about some old stories. He said, I watched Cornette learn how to fight because the people would just assault us. And he would be laying there. Of course, the reason why they were assaulting us is because we knocked Ricky Morton out.
Of course.
And he'd be laying there on his back in the ring with one eye open, his head cocked over, watching us swinging and fighting and throwing shoes at people and hitting people with tennis rackets.
You know what he'd do sometimes? He'd start to go, "Help me," to the people. Help me. I'm fighting for my life here.
Because Ricky still looks like he's 20 years old. I don't know how old he is. I think when he was in school, they didn't have history. But, when he would get a good sweat going, it would look like he was crying, and he'd make that face, and he'd reach out to the front row, and he'd mouth those words, "Help me."
Yeah.
And the people would come over the rail, and I was in between the rail and the ring, so I was the first one that got it.
First line of defense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of experience, boom. You get out of Oklahoma. Now you have an interest. Where does your interest in being in the creative department behind the camera as opposed to so far it seems like a manager and just getting in there? You wrote for the magazine, obviously. When did you get interested in the creative part?
Well, I got to blame one of your old friends, the Nate. Ric Flair.
I love you so much, Rickus. You're such a pain in the ass.
It's all his fault because Rick had championed for us to go to work for Crockett as talent. When we had the run with him from '86 till he sold the company, or '85 till he sold the company. But Rick had taken the book when Turner Broadcasting bought WCW, and it was headed down south fast.
Yeah.
And Rick had taken the book. This is when Jim Herd was there. And
when Jim Herd was there. So the WWF had already started.
Oh, yeah. What
year are we?
This was 1989. And, I was always interested in, and I started coming up with some of the Midnight Express's finishes, and Dusty Rhodes, bless him, taught me a lot when I was working for Crockett, and he'd say, I'm going to let you have your head on this, kid. What do you think we ought to do? Well, Dusty, how about we do that? Okay, kid, do that. And then he'd rein me in every once in a while.
Yeah.
But then Rick, when Turner Broadcasting took over, Rick calls me one day. We both lived in Charlotte. He had the big house. I had the rented house.
Got it.
And he said, I'm taking the book, and I want you and Kevin Sullivan, working for me. Will you agree to do this? And I said, absolutely. Yes. Once again, yes, I can parasail.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you worked with the son of Satan, Kevin Sullivan.
And riding up and down the road, he's told me many stories, including where was it that y'all went? Was it Trinidad when he dropped the NWA title to like Jack Veneno because the military leveled the assault rifles at you?
And the army started beating me with the chains. And then there was the shooting of the alligator in Alligator Alley. However, that's Kevin Sullivan. So God bless you. I don't know how much therapy you've had to go through to get here alive. You got Sullivan?
Well, I was in the car riding up and down the road with Ric Flair and Kevin Sullivan, so you can imagine that I developed a little twitch of my own.
Yeah, but also that's how we learned back then. You would go, like in Charlotte, for instance, there was one trip to Norfolk, like 330 miles. And I'd be in the back seat, opening the beers for Sweet Hansen and whoever else it was, or Mad Dog Vachon. And they would tell me the same stories over and over. I just didn't realize they were waiting until I got it,
Yeah.
I just thought dumbasses can't remember shit, No, Rod, as soon as you get it, we can move on. So you've got that same situation going.
You going from Charleston, West Virginia to Charleston, South Carolina, you can book the entire world in that trip. You can book the whole world.
You can book the world and have a return. Yeah. Okay, so whoosh. So Flair, Sullivan, Jarrett,
Bill Watts, Dusty Rhodes.
Woof.
You'd have to be an eggplant not to learn something.
Oh man,
right?
Oh man. And you're a sponge. You're not an eggplant. Credit where credit's due here. Hey. Holy cow, what a show. We got Jimmy Cornette, and at the same time, we've got Kevin from San Francisco. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Roddy. Good afternoon, Jim. How you guys doing?
Box of fluffy ducks. I understand you have a question for, I'm assuming it's for Mr. Cornette.
Yes, I have one for Jim, and then after that I have one for you if you have a moment, Rod.
Go for it.
For you, Jim, I was curious. You're known as such an avid collector of wrestling memorabilia. If your house was on fire and you could only save 2 items from the collection, I'm curious what items those would be.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you almost specifically. I do have one of the largest pro wrestling memorabilia collections in the world, stuff that goes all the way back to the 30s. And I just loved it when Roddy was talking about watching the old films of the 50s and Gorgeous George and Baron Leone, and et cetera. I have the actual original office set of programs from the St. Louis Wrestling office. I got them from Pat O'Connor's wife after he passed away. And
wow.
It's a bound set of every program for every show that Sam Muchnick promoted from 1945 until 1982. And it's autographed by not only Sam Muchnick himself, which I got this personally back in 97 at a WWF pay-per-view, but it's also autographed by Lou Thez, Jack Briscoe, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, Gene Kiniski, Ric Flair, did I mention, and Harley Race.
Wow.
And I would take that, and also... this leads into the films we were talking about. I bought my first VCR in 1979 specifically to tape wrestling, and I have like 4,000 or 5,000 wrestling tapes. But my most prized collection of tapes is, Roddy, this shows you how stupid Turner Broadcasting was. When they bought Jim Crockett Promotions and they came to Charlotte and they cleaned out the office and took all the TV tapes and the rings and everything, I told the janitor that worked there, I said, if they go to throw anything away, make sure you call me. And he calls me one afternoon. He says, they've come, they've got everything, and I got a big stack of posters, and I got some pictures, and I got a big bunch of film here, boxes of film. And I immediately had a heart attack because you remember in the promo room, Roddy, when we did promos on Wednesdays.
Yep.
Gene Anderson would run the promos in the studio there they had at Crockett's office. All the film, the 16-millimeter film of every arena match that they had shot from the 70s, from the Mid-Atlantic territory, they just threw it away. It was sitting on the side of the road next to the dumpster waiting for the garbage truck. They didn't want the film.
Baby Jesus.
And
Really?
I took it at 36 hours worth of stuff, and I transferred it. And as a matter of fact, at JimCornette.com, that 18-disc set is available.
Where was that?
JimCornette.com.
Yeah.
For all things Cornette, but I do have that on sale for the avid wrestling collector, but it's 36 hours of Mid-Atlantic wrestling from the 70s from the arenas, and they threw the stuff away. I'm talking the Andersons, Flair and Valentine, Steamboat, Race, Briscoe, Funk.
Mulligan.
Mulligan. The only thing I'm mad about is they switched to videotape right when you came into territory.
I seem to have that kind of effect on people. Piper's
Kevin,
coming. Close the door.
Those are my two most prized wrestling possessions.
Well, boy, that's a hell of an answer. I never heard a better answer, Kevin. So, better thank him, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Jim always delivers on the mic, no question.
Yeah.
And then for you, Rob, my question was, you've appeared so many places and you've had a way of, let's say, drawing the ire of the crowd and making events into kind of unforgettable moments.
Both. Yeah.
I'm curious, how do your appearances at the Gathering of the Juggalos stack up with all the crazy places you've gone and been and done?
The Juggalos, they're just, a bunch of dumbass kids. Paint their face up like a clown and, stay up for the first 2 days ever in their life. It's their first beer. So I was standing there at 4 a.m. in the morning, wanting me to get in the ring with Terry Funk. And these guys are running around like, what should we do? Why don't you just ring the bell? There would be an idea. And ring the bell, and then I go into a tent, and there's no security there, and I got to choke a couple people out because I'm supposed to be doing a funny stand-up act, and they keep coming, and, it's just another... Well, I miss the old days. Doesn't that sound like fun to you?
Another night on the road.
Yeah, another night on the road. Then, you get off and all the state policemen are there because they got it on private property. And the state policemen, and so the first thing they say, we got Roddy Piper with them. Well, what of us carrying a gun? What are you throwing me under the bus for? Anyway, a lot of those ones. But thank you. The one for Mr. Cornette, Kevin, was fantastic. And, boy, what an answer. I'd love to see that.
Hey, Roddy, I'll tell you something. These Juggalos, they think they're tough. They ain't nothing compared to the Cajuns down in Louisiana or those Cowboys down in Texas. I know you and those rednecks in North Carolina when they were jacked up. These Juggalos couldn't whip cream with an outboard motor.
Okay, so now, buddy, when is the first time you get kind of you were throwing ideas? Was it past Bill Watts, or when you started kind of on getting on the creative side and behind the camera? How did that evolution begin?
Well, like I said, Rick asked me to be on the creative team, and I worked with him and Kevin there, and then Rick got fed up with Jim Hurd, and he quit.
Yeah, I remember Hurd.
And I lasted about 6 weeks after that, and then he drove me crazy, too. And I told Jim Ross, I said, tell him I'm not going to be at the booking meeting this week because if I was, I would stick my fingers 2 knuckles deep in his eye sockets. And that was the way I gave my notice from the creative team.
We seem to have something in common when we give our notice. So now, who did your chemistry was the best with at that time? Was it a Flair chemistry? I'm talking about as far as philosophy on what you're thinking, creative in the creative department?
Oh, yeah.
Or Cat Sullivan, or where?
You know Rick. Rick would set the tone. Rick would say, I want these guys to work with these guys, and I want to work with this guy. And then Kevin would come up with ideas and bounce them off, and then I had good handwriting. Yeah. So I would write everything down, and you know, like Coco do. After a monkey could learn this if you're being told by the right people. So that's how I kind of pick things up. And
okay, and then you move on. Like Jim Herd at the time, they were desperately trying to fight WWF, and boom. So you're out of there with Herd, and where do you head? What year is this now? 96.
No, actually, we're still back in at the end of 90. I left WCW.
Okay, bud, thanks.
And I opened up a territory called Smoky Mountain Wrestling in Knoxville, Tennessee, which, as a matter of fact, Flair told me I ought to give him 10% because he and Mulligan lost about $100,000 trying to run a Knoxville territory.
but that's where you really, or rather other people really started to take note of you, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it was a time where all the territories were going out of business, as you know, and it was basically, WWF and WCW was so far behind. They were like number 3 in a 2-horse race. Yeah. And Smoky Mountain was kind of the last territory besides the Memphis end. And, we had some great talent. Orndorff came down to work for us, Ronnie Garvin, the Rock and Roll Express.
Great guys.
Those guys. But we lasted about 4 years there, and then.
But you did good business.
We did. We had highs and lows, but I'm always proud that we sold out our big shows in the Knoxville Civic Coliseum every summer.
So now, just the style, if I may, and just shoot straight with me here, bud. If you want to move on, just what style of what was drawing for you in Smoky Mountain? Because I imagine you're doing the same towns every week. Are pretty close.
Well, we went to the big towns once a month, and we went to a lot of the spot shows, the smaller towns in eastern Kentucky and western Virginia. And it was a combination, really. It was kind of Tennessee wrestling, but it had a little Crockett flair because we were also running western North Carolina. Yeah. And it also had a little Bill Watts Mid-South package show feel to it. So it was kind of a mixture.
So for those folks that don't maybe to try to get them to understand this. If you ever watch where Jerry Lawler had Andy Kaufman, and I knew Andy Kaufman, and when Jerry Lawler got him in the ring, I think the only thing Jerry Lawler did was suplex him one time, and that was it. And it's a completely different style. They're great at it. It's just a completely different style, isn't it, Jimmy?
And actually, I was there at ringside that night. I was shooting pictures. I was there. Okay. I'm like the Forrest Gump of wrestling. All these incidents happened. I was there. But and Kaufman understood what the guys were doing, and he loved it. He loved to get heat with people.
He was copying me.
People believe it.
He used to sing Elvis outside the Olympic Auditorium to get in for free, and then he'd come and get me and take me in his van into the new Dick Van Dyke show. And he would imitate me in the improv, and people would just start leaving and going like, "That's not funny," and you take it to the, just like what I was saying. Anyway, so by the time you got him, that's where his head was coming from.
Exactly, and he would carry things to the extreme, So he wore that neck brace for a year and a half after Lawler dropped him on his head. Lawler said people have been in car wrecks and haven't
like
worn
Ace's cast, right?
Yeah, but finally I started working for Vince while I was still running my company in Knoxville. That was about 93.
How did you meet Vince?
Actually, Bruce Pritchard, his brother, Dr. Tom, you were a big influence on Tom. Was one of my tag team at the time, the Heavenly Bodies.
Nice.
And we sent Bruce a tape that we were just kind of ribbing him on. It was an interview just meant for him, but he called me back the next week and said, "Aha, very funny, motherfucker." He said, but I wasn't alone when I watched that. He said, "Would you guys like to make some dates up here?" Okay, sure. And we started doing WWF television, and that was the time where, and I love him to death, total package Lex Luger, love package, but Vince was convinced that Lex Luger is going to be the next Hulk Hogan.
Gotcha. Okay, I remember where you're at.
I could have told him, because we tried that about 3 or 4 years before that in WCW, and it didn't pan out.
Gotcha. Love Lex. Love Lex.
Vince wanted me to be the American spokesman for Yokozuna so that Yokozuna could try to get Lex over. And by the time that Vince gave up on that spot for Lex, I was already with Yoko. Because you remember Fuji's command of the English language was questionable at best.
Brother. All Japanese
brother.
People are from Hawaii for some reason to get in wrestling.
Yeah, so was Tojo Yamamoto. He was Hawaiian too.
Yeah,
okay. But that's how I started running with Vince, and when we talked on the phone yesterday, I want to tell you a story that you don't know about how we got some heat one time. But in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1996. We were doing a pay-per-view for the WWF, and I got to work with you in my hometown, and this was great. I'm working with Roddy Piper in my hometown. We're going to go out and we're going to do this big promo, right? and all I had to do was say two things. I just had to say two things, but the two things I had to say were after you finished telling me what you had to say.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So we go out there and we're in front of the people, and you were wound up at night, and you cut this promo. You shucked the corn all the way down off the cob, right? Just the whole 9 yards. And I knew in my mind we were going overtime, but hey, first of all, what am I going to do? I'm going to cut off Roddy Piper. And secondly, I was enjoying myself, so I was just listening to you. You were spitting on me, and the fur was flying, and you were talking. And when you get finished, I say my couple of things, and I run off.
Yeah.
And I go back through the curtain first, and there's Bruce Pritchard sitting in a gorilla position, and there's Shawn Michaels, and he's glowering. He's apparently been throwing one of his noted hissy fits.
Gotcha.
Now he's only going to get 25 minutes instead of the 30 minutes he's supposed to have. And Bruce starts telling me, "You went over." I said, "I went over." I said two things. I said, "Talk to Roddy," right?
Yeah.
Seconds later, you come through the curtain, and Bruce looks up at you and gives you the big smile and the thumbs up. "Great, Hot Rod, just great." So I got the heat.
You got all the heat for me. I love it. I just wouldn't shut up, right?
Oh no, but it was good. It was good.
I love you. Well, I apologize for that. That's
it, Roddy. I tell you, I'll be glad to take your heat anytime.
I love you. Okay, now listen. What was the chemistry with you and Vincent? Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon. I always say Vince McMahon is the most complex person in the world. You know this. At some points he's a genius. At some points he's insane.
Yeah.
At some points, you will develop a twitch trying to figure him out.
He's a twist. I love him, but he's twisted as hell.
He's equally at home in a boardroom meeting or talking about fart jokes. And we did the thing where it was a couple of years I was on the creative team up there, and we would do the thing where we'd go to his house on Wednesdays and write.
Yeah.
And me and Bruce Pritchard, and later on me and the other guy, and Jim Ross was in there. And, Vince is he's the greatest promoter in the history of wrestling. I still am not sure sometimes. His creative mind, he has some great ideas, but it's feast or famine, boy. These things will either fly or flop in your face.
Yeah, he doesn't have the experience the experience he has from the outside and from Pat Patterson and matchmaking. But on the other side, from the inside of the ring, he doesn't have that experience. And so he can get a great idea, but he can't see it through sometimes. That's where he needs.
Yeah, I would go along with that. And you can't argue with success, but sometimes you can argue with methods. I can't. But that we all have our downfall or our shortcomings and our strong suits. And I can see where Vince would come up with an idea, and with your energy and stuff, boom, you go. Like I'd say to him, Vince, I did this one time. Orton, I got Orton Jr., I got Orton Sr. I wrestled Bobby Orton's dad. There's the Randy Orton. And geez, what have I got? And he goes, Knuckles. Another generation, the Knuckles will be dragging on the ground, and I'm gone. So like that would be our communication. Knuckles, well, Vince in some ways is a genius and is obviously an educated man. And then there was a time we're sitting there at his house, and the cable man comes to fix the cable, and he says, "Yeah, pal, in there in the TV room there's no sound." Okay, sir, I'll go check. And he comes back in about 30 seconds later. He said he's got the remote in his hand. He says, "Sir, see this? It's a mute button." Okay, pal, thanks a lot. He tips the guy $100, right, to press his mute button. Many people wish Vince had a mute button, but nevertheless.
Yeah, I remember him from his dad. I think the last guy his dad hired. But I remember watching him develop, and I have a chemistry with him, a good chemistry. He loves to hate me, but
It's his hobby.
Yeah, it's his hobby, and me, I just got that chip on my shoulder. I won't stop. But you hung in there for a long time. Where did you take the company as far as? Okay, let's get down to the important stuff. What were you doing, or what were you changing when you got to the WWE and you became, the guy with the key to the kingdom, and you started booking matches? What is it you were selling, so to speak?
Well, see, there were Vince always is the one that has the keys. He'll open the gate for you every now and then.
Gotcha.
And what I tried to do was I thought we needed to feature more wrestling, more younger talent, get newer guys over. But I always wanted to try to keep some credibility because this was at a time where WCW was still falling apart. Bischoff hadn't convinced Turner Broadcasting to open up the checkbook yet.
Yeah.
And I thought, we really have an opportunity to be different. But, Vince's sense of humor, I thought it was a little gimmicky, a little cartoony. I tried to go for the more serious stuff. And
what was one of your angles out there? What was one of your one that you liked or you didn't like?
I'll tell you something that I was really happy that came together that everybody remembers is a kid that worked for me in Knoxville in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Because we had the talent trade, I was able to bring The Undertaker down to work with this guy that I called Unabomb. Okay. And his name was Glenn Jacobs. And Dutch Mantell had recommended him to me, had him down in Puerto Rico. And Glenn at the time was 6'10", 320, and jacked. And looked great. And I said, here's an opponent for The Undertaker. So Vince immediately, hired Glenn Jacobs and made him an evil dentist. And then he was the fake Diesel for a while when Vince was mad at Nash. But then finally, it was decided Undertaker would have an evil brother, and his name would be Kane. Yeah. And, of course, Bruce had a hand in that. But I'll tell you the thing that everybody remembers, the Hell in a Cell match with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker in St. Louis on pay-per-view where Kane debuted and came in and ripped the door off and tombstone pile drove The Undertaker. Yeah. The Hell in a Cell concept was my idea, which basically, well, here's the thing. When you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. When you steal from many, it's research.
Absolutely. So never be afraid to steal, Jim.
Exactly.
It's research. You're putting it together yourself.
Strangler Lewis is mad at everybody that's done the headlock since then. But,
exactly.
The cage apparatus, it was a combination of the big cage that they had around the ring in Memphis and the top that they put on it from the War Games matches that Dusty came up with.
Gotcha.
And if you remember a young man named Doug Furness.
Oh, yeah.
The world's strongest man. He was a University of Tennessee volunteer football player. The way they debuted him in Knoxville, Tennessee as a professional wrestler in 1988 on Christmas night was he ripped the door off the cage and came in and saved the baby faces. So we researched all those ideas, and I came up with the idea of, because they wanted to make sure that Michaels would still win the match, but Undertaker would have to go in a different direction because he wasn't going to get even with Michaels, and he didn't want to leave Undertaker like a plate full of piss.
Yeah.
So there's the place for his brother to debut, and he can come out in this cage that we've gimmicked up with the top on it so there's no way in and no way out, and he can rip the door off the cage, and he tombstoned Undertaker, and that was one of the most successful programs that Taker's had in, the 20-something years he's been in the WWF, and
left a mark.
Really shown in that, and it was just...
So Hell in the Cell is yours.
Nice. Creative Services came up with the name. I was going to go with Rage in the Cage. That was another one I researched.
That would have worked.
But it was that concept of things, and just to get a chance to, I always wanted to debut new talent in as good a light as possible. And
gotcha.
Any of the young guys, whether it be Chris Candido or the young girls like Sonny, and then later on when I had the developmental program here in Ohio Valley Wrestling, I always tried to play to the young guys' strengths, accentuate their strengths, and eliminate their weaknesses so that they had as good a chance as possible to get over. And that's a talent that a lot of, people don't have these days. They just want the guy to fit the suit.
So now, okay, let me, if I may, please stay with me, would you?
I would be glad to.
Please, because we're never going to have this chance again. And I want to bring it right up to today, and I need to just. This show went so fast. I'm going to have to say goodbye, and please let's do part 2 for next week.
I was going to say, but now you said we're never going to have this chance again. Have you been talking about Doctor? You know something I don't know?
No, I've been talking to mine. Oh. And he told me I'm going to see Flair soon.
Oh, my God.
Baby Jesus, I got in more trouble. Flair would do it, I'd go to jail. I'm in the condado, and some guy comes out in the taxi, and he's got a gun, and he's coming behind Flair, and I see it, and I dive for the gun, and here comes the police. Flair takes off. And they throw me in jail. And now there's only 2 flights out of San Juan. One at 7 in the morning and one at 7 at night. Well, the next day I had Greenville in the afternoon for the world title against Flair, and that night in Toronto for the world title. But I'm in jail, and Carlos Colon is trying to get me out. And so Terry Funk comes. And for the next 2 years, they would say to Terry Funk, "Hey, Terry, what you doing?" He'd go, "I'm just making the shots that Pfeiffer doesn't." We'll see you next week with Jim Cornette, ladies and gentlemen. Never forget, go forward. There's no other way. Yes. Green Hills of Tyrol would be the name of that tune, and this name of this show would be Rowdy Roddy Piper, Piper's Pit, Podcast 1. Boy, the loosest format in media. There's nothing I can't do, they said. I said, there's nothing I can't do. Put me on. And they gave me Raymond as my producer. He sits back and like it's a shark cage. He's got like one of those sticks, he gets me. It's like a shotgun. Boom. Just pushes me back, though. Tries to slap me on the nose if I do something wrong. I got my handler here, Julian, and he just like pokes me with the chair and the whip thing. Oh no, I guess I don't get it. I never see it. Like Vince Russo says, "Roddy, you're a very intimidating guy. I don't get it. Eat shit and die. I mean, come on." Last week we had to have 2 weeks. We got again Jim Cornette, and incredible conversations going on here. And we're going to get to Jim here in a second. There's a couple things, though, where, every once in a while Rod gets serious. I hate getting serious. But I'm going to do a PSA, public service announcement. And it's for bullying. And I've heard some people say, we're so tired of hearing this. And, what happened to kids learning to stand up for themselves, and hey, I get all that. I get it. I've been bullied. I know what bullying is. I read an article, 55,000 children have committed suicide over the last 3 years from being bullied. That's 22 kids a day committing suicide from being bullied. That's too much for me. I'm a dad. I got 4 kids. So I'm doing a bully PSA. But I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to go say hi to them. You don't go to a bully and beat them up, because then I'm just a bully. Usually they just need a hug, and they got some kind of problem. Everybody's got problems. You know what the biggest problem is? Is not being honest. Just laying out your problem. You got to find somebody who cares. That's another problem. But just laying it out as it comes instead of holding on to it. You can't go around bullying people. So I'm going to do that PSA. I'm going to, at the same time, I have another movie I'm going to do here, starting real quick, called The Chair, in which I play a prison guard that bullies people. I whoop the dog out of him with a stick, and I'm a horrible guy. And that's that movie's called The Chair, shot here in Los Angeles. So, kind of looking forward to that. I thought that would be fun. I did a commercial for Soft Card with with this little thing that tried to run up my kilt. It was fun. Soft Card, a new form of payment, and I just want to reach out to them. They were great people. They were really cool. And the commercial's fun if you want to take a look at it. Me being silly. And they put this wig on me because they wanted me to look like I did in They Live. Like they're stapling this thing on. I'm looking at it and I'm going, is that how I looked? Really? Geez, man. How different times, different times, tight jeans. What's that guy, jeans so tight. What's that? The old man goes to the Walmart and he says, yeah, where's the ballroom? And the lady at Walmart says, well, we don't have a ballroom here. He says, that's what's wrong with these pants. You can also see, in the 80s, holy cow, where's the ballroom? And as They Live, if you look at those jeans, it looks like they painted them on me. I've got I'm doing this for you guys. I love you, and I also need the outlet, so I just don't grab a bologna sandwich and a high-powered rifle on top of a tower someday. All right? I'm opening up a new channel, Villain TV, Villain Network, and I'm going to put just really cool stuff on it. And, you're going to be able to see it on YouTube, on my Twitter, YouTube channel. I know everybody says everybody's got one, you know what? But Roddy Piper hasn't got one. And now he will. And Villain. You got to see what it's like. It's like the baby faces of our business. The gals, they want to drink champagne, With the Villain, they just want beer. All right? Beer, boom. Let's make love. It's a good thing. Graphic novel. If you go to rowdyroddypiper.com, for all your shopping goods, there's a new Villain D-shirts out. They all out of Bubblegum Soda Pop, that aired. You might have seen it on Undercover Boss. They just reran Wife Swap with myself and Ric Flair. It was like, Flair there in 4 days. 4 days, my wife corralled Flair, had him in a hoodie with a cardboard mustache on him, making him shop and stay at home with the kids. 32 years I have been with her. I ain't been rode yet. Geez, there's a hell of a story I can tell you about breeding a horse. But we got to remind me for another time about how I had to hold the horse that was going to be bred. And a horse with the biggest schlunz I've ever seen come at me, and we'll pick that up another time. I know I need to get to Jim Cornette, great guy. I'm going to dive in with him. So here we go. We're talking about bullying. I'm going to do the PSA, Soft Card. That was a commercial I did with some really nice people. It's going to be the new form of payment. You know what they're doing? They're just getting rid of money. Just so you guys know, all right? No, I won't give my fingerprint at the gymnasium. No. You 24-hour fitness, you're a great gym and all that. If you think you're getting my fingerprint, not a chance. I'm old school. No, I'll pay cash for it. Oh, we don't take cash. Then I don't take your product. On the planes, that's where they're getting you. We only take credit cards, Well, then to hell with you. And then once they get all the cash away from you, then they just give you a little plastic thing. The ultimate control. Now I'm with Jesse Ventura into conspiracies. But I'm a believer in self-sufficient. You got to be for what I do for a living. I know I got to get to Jim Cornette. So the movie, The Chair, I'm doing, the graphic novel, get it. Go to rowdyroddypiper.com. I'm telling you, it's going to be a collector's item. You're going to love it. I had them make it first class. All kinds of great things going on there. All kinds of great cheer. Thanks to you. 215's great year. We've had great guests. Jeepers Creepers. Is there anything else that I like my producer? Am I missing anybody or anything? Cool. And how am I doing? Yeah, just another day in paradise, a box of fluffy ducks. Ladies and gentlemen, right after the break, we're going to get into it with the one and only Jim Cornette. See you in a sec. I've been playing those things since I was 5 years old. My name is Roddy Piper, and you're on Piper's Pit Podcast 1. This is the second part with a gentleman I'm getting to know real well, Mr. Jim Cornette. Are you there, Jim?
I am here, Roddy.
I love you so much. We were just, last week we were talking about your relationship with Vince McMahon, and we're teasing back and forth, with Vince, and, we agree that, hey, guy made himself a billionaire. You can have some faults, but I was in a hotel room last WrestleMania. Bobby Orton were just, as we slob around a hotel room, and Bobby's got, I don't know what it was, Time or Forbes, and he's looking down it, and he goes, "Hey, Roddy." "Yeah, Bobby." He says, "Right here it has a list of billionaires. Says Vince McMahon is number 23. Don't you think you want to start getting along with him?" For the rest of WrestleMania, I would hear 23. So here you are in the creative with Vince McMahon, and is it Pritchard? Who's your staff, or who are you with?
It started out me and Bruce Pritchard and Jim Ross would come over occasionally, and then of course we might as well mention the guy's name.
Okay.
Because then, the problem, Vince's main fault in the late 90s was when Turner Broadcasting accidentally tripped over a good idea, and Eric Bischoff got him to start spending some money.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, Vince started getting his ass kicked at his own game.
Yep.
And
big time.
And, I got to be honest with you, I figured that if you just stayed the course, presented a good product, etc., we figured that WCW was going to somewhat self-destruct because Turner Broadcasting, it wasn't their first mission to run a wrestling company, and they never knew what they had. And,
true.
And old ATM Eric, he pretty much set them up to where as long as they were spending a fortune...
Eric.
As long as they were spending a fortune, they were good. But if business ever went down, then that would be the end of it, which, as prophecy, came true.
The other thing there, just while we're on that point, is, I went over to the WCW, but, I'm not at war with anyone. But who the fuck's at war? I'm not at war. I'm just working another territory here, guys. You want to quit insulting the other people?
Vince took it real personal.
Holy cow!
And that's when, unfortunately, a guest of yours here recently, Vince Russo, was added to the equation. And I got to admit, I took you to task a little bit on. I do a humble little podcast. It's not as big as yours, Roddy, but it's a humble little podcast.
How do I hear it?
Well, the Jim Cornette Experience every week, or you can just go to JimCornette.com and you can punch right on podcast. It'll take you right to it. Anything
Beautiful.
I do, you go to my website, you can get there.
Okay, and your podcast is once a week?
Once a week, the Jim Cornette Experience.
Gotcha.
And I had heard that you had Vince Russo on the show, and it hurt my heart because I said, why would Roddy Piper, a guy who's always taken up for the business and always taken up for the credibility and the respect for the business, have this flaming uncircumcised prick on his show?
I have an answer for that. I do.
Actually, I'll tell you this real quick. One of my listeners then emailed me the following week and said, "But I listened to it, and Roddy verbally gutted him with a rusty fishing knife." And then it restored my faith in you, Roddy Piper. So
it's like, there's. I'm not going to use Owen Hart for ratings, and it was accused of that. I'm not, but I did something back in 2003 with him that crashed 50 million hits and crashed whatever. I was in Tennessee with Russo, and that's kind of where this all started from. But it's like the OJ trial. Well, it was on TV. Was it on TV for ratings? I suppose, but. It's the kind of thing, if I'm going to address it, I want to address it in front of God and everybody so there's no bullshit, and let's get it done and find out what do you know, what do you not know. And that was more a reason, which, again, that's ratings-driven, but also I really was trying to be as authentic as I can in everything I'm doing here. So that's my answer, good or bad.
The moon landing got the biggest ratings of television of all time, but they didn't go to the moon just for ratings.
There you go. There you go. And it's kind of, it's a slippery slope, and I can understand. But, like, where did the heat start with you two?
Well, it's my hobby to kind of remind everybody at every point that I get that he is a dipshit who has ruined the credibility of wrestling, and many of the people involved who have said not only the Owen situation, but just the horrible gimmicks that he's given people that have killed their careers dead in their tracks and cost their families money, and that he has cost the business credibility, that he hot-shotted. See, that Vince McMahon was frantic because he was getting his ass kicked, and this guy had a bunch of different ideas to break all the rules, and then he broke all the rules, and then we found out why there were rules.
Yes, the code.
You know, it used to, when you hot-shotted a territory, when business was on its ass and you gave them everything you could, whether it be blood or violence or chaos or whatever, you got the people back, you got the eyeballs, and then you pulled back. You let up on the accelerator.
Otherwise you kill the territory.
Exactly. That was the balancing act, and the old masters knew how to do those things. They knew when and where to pull back before it got too late. But Vince Russo, being that he suffers from attention deficit disorder and diarrhea of the keyboard and constipation of the brain, never could master that,
punches.
And he thought
Quit pulling
that
punches.
basically, well, I'm trying to sugarcoat this as much as possible.
No.
He basically, that's the kind of, he wanted wrestling to turn into a Jerry Springer show and not to be elected mayor of Cincinnati.
So then what do you think of, and there's a point here where the creative differences, whatever, you decided that you're going to head on to another spot. And correct me here if I'm wrong. At that time, they started to, they broke everything down. They got a small auditorium. That's why they called it Raw. They got a lot of TNA in there and a lot of, all that burlesque kind of thing that does draw a certain crowd. Is that what Vince wanted?
It's the two dogs fucking on the side of the road syndrome.
Yes.
If you see that, you're going to look at it because, I'll get a momentary tickle out of it. But if the same two dogs stay in the same place for 3 weeks, pretty soon you're just walking by, you don't even look at them.
There you go. And is that what you were against? Obviously, Crash TV.
That's the Crash TV thing. It's just
hot-shotting.
It's hot-shotting. He just didn't know the term hot-shotting, but it's the same thing. And fortunately, I went to Louisville, came back to Louisville and partnered with Danny Davis in Ohio Valley Wrestling, and we got the developmental program, so we were training the young guys. We left Vince up there to do whatever, and that's when he turned around and gave his notice by phone and went to WCW. And I'll just say this, and I don't want to be the guy that monopolizes your podcast talking about Vince Russo, or as I call him, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. I don't want to be that, but I'll just say this. In professional wrestling, the key to success is longevity. The key to success is, could you get over in a different bunch of places? Could you get over for an extended period of time? Do people still come and see you, or still come and watch you years and years and years? And you've done that, and Flair's done that, and a lot of people have done that. Vince Russo had 2 years of success of working for Vince McMahon, the most successful promoter of all time, with a network-quality television production facility, the greatest wrestling announcer ever, Jim Ross, to call the action, and Steve Austin and The Rock, two of the biggest stars that have ever come along simultaneously.
And, Kevin Dunn on that TV doesn't do a bad job.
And after 1999, when he went to WCW, point me to the success that Vince Russo has had in the wrestling industry. Every company that he has worked for since then has not only flamed out and gone out of business, but in spectacular fashion, or has been worse off when he left it than they were when he started there.
Gotcha.
So he had 2 years of success and 16 years of absolute, utter failure, and still blames other people, standards and practices, or if they'd only let me do what I wanted to do.
Yeah. David Arquette, the world champion.
And I know a lot of guys aren't in a position to speak up these days. They don't want to burn bridges, but I've already crossed the bridges that I want to cross, and I also have a parachute just in case of emergency. And so I like to say that for the people whose careers he shortened or ruined, or the chances that they would have had to get over, that his rotten gimmicks and his shitty booking and his ridiculous, ludicrous tactics prevented them, and for the business itself, where people were immune to angles, and because he just angled them to death and just made everything so preposterous and unbelievable. And the Crash TV, he has harmed our business and taken tools out of our toolbox that used to draw money that have been completely and utterly prostituted to the point where now Dutch Mantell, old Zeb Coulter, currently on WWE TV, he said it best. He said, years ago, we used to pretend to hurt each other, and the people believed it. Now, we really do hurt each other, and everybody thinks it's bullshit. Who's the marks? Who's the marks?
You see, only one of the boys could come up with that, and that's a shoot. Okay, hang on a second here, Jimmy. So let's take a look at the WWE right now, and take a look at the WWE during Vince, the Crash TV kind of thing. Now, I understand hot shot, getting it going, but you got to back off, and whatever you hot shot underneath, you've got Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk coming up.
Right.
With the WWE the way it is now, and I'm, no politics here at all. I have all the respect, and I love everybody there that gets in the ring and answers the bell. They're amazing, but we need to talk about them. The way the WWE is now, and you have Crash TV, I think there's something in the middle. I understand. I understand Double Bridge. I'm a Double Bridge guy too.
when they change their mind, they go all the way in the other direction, don't they?
They do. They can't seem to find that solid. Buddy, if I'm in a bar and I'm the world champion, you're not gonna beat me. I'm gonna, if I'm the world champion, I'm gonna walk around like I'm the world champion.
There's some middle ground between a Catholic sermon and a pornographic movie.
Yes, sir. What is that? What would you do? What would you do with the WWE right now?
Roddy, at this point, I'm not sure, and I'll tell you why in a second, but I'm not sure that there's anything that can be done, because that's why I say that Dana White is the most successful pro wrestling promoter today in the world.
Huh. Did you see the thing where they fired him and the confetti came down?
Oh,
Okay, now listen, I don't want, because, I'll go do 3 hours on it and be blackballed again. But, you just happen to have confetti and, Here's the thing is that now everybody is smart, and they say it's because of the internet, but I don't believe that, because Chris Angel is a great magician, and I can go on the internet and see what he's doing, where he's performing, but I don't see the diagrams for his props, and I don't understand from reading the internet how he can be run over with a steamroller and then picked up with a spatula. Let me tell you what you're saying, and I agree with you on this. I'm sitting down in an airplane with Don Morocco and Bobby Orton, and Don Morocco's got Time Magazine. First Wrestlemania had just been played, and Morocco's reading the magazine, and Time Magazine goes, "Pro wrestling is 99% fake." Morocco looks out over at me and he says, "See, they don't even know." See, yeah, because until you've been in there, no, there's nothing fake about it. You're looking for all those, all those ugly things. And there's got to be there's an entertainment in it. I understand that, but it's an art.
Wrestling was always entertaining. When you think about it, pro football, anything somebody does for money or even not for money. College basketball is entertaining. Amateur sports are entertaining to the people that enjoy it.
You know what they're missing? It's the art, the psychology. Yes. The moves are just, because we can't use words, the moves are just the way we translate the psychology to you. And that's what's, you tell me in my house show I got 12 minutes. No. I'm not sure how long it'll take me. When I go out, I don't even know what I'm going to do. If it's buzzing, I don't know. I might start on a 1. If they're sitting on their hands, I might start on a 6 and go to a 2. I don't know.
Well,
and I think, are we on the same?
The restaurant, you go to a fine restaurant, they don't bring you the food before you order. How do you know what to serve the people until you know what they're hungry for?
There you go. And each arena, each venue, no matter what the angle is on TV, each of these people, they have their take on it. You can go to Boston, you can go to Nassau, you can go to Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens when it was there. And yes, it's the same angle. Snuka hit him with but you know what? Each building takes it different. We all kind of have our own slant on it. And
sometimes the people wanted to see the babyface beat the heel up for 10 minutes and then get some heat. Sometimes the people just wanted to get mad right off the bat.
Yeah. Sometimes they just want to see a fight.
Exactly, and that's what they're not seeing, and that's why I always say that the UFC guys are using all of pro wrestling's tricks because we're not using it anymore. It's about who's going to win the title or who's going to get even for a grudge. Two guys that have a legitimate reason to fight each other for money, glory, fame, retribution, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And now it's become, unfortunately, and the guys who suffer, you notice the talent in the ring is not on that Forbes billionaire list. They're
23.
The ones that are going out and 23. They're the ones that are going out and getting beat up for a living, and it's harder and harder. They have to take more bumps for half the response.
Okay, so now, Jimmy, now let's show you. Boom, you get the Smoky Mountain, boom, WWE, and all of a sudden there's Jimmy and ROH. Okay, whoa, what's this? This is a whole new style.
Well, and that's exactly why I was involved in it, because I got into the guys. They have an incredible work ethic.
Oh,
they
yes.
work their asses off. They're great athletes,
I love
and
them.
they're young and they're unspoiled. And I was kind of instrumental in making the sale from Kerry Silkin, who's been a friend of mine for a long time, to Sinclair Broadcasting, which I came to regret because I thought Sinclair Broadcasting was a little more serious than they were about getting into wrestling business. I found out later on they have the reputation in the television industry of being the cheapest broadcast group in television.
They got a good product there.
And they got great in-ring product, and I wanted them to spend a little more money and put a little more importance behind it. But at the same time, for wrestling to succeed, I think they have to get back to these athletes, superb athletes in the ring, hitting each other hard, telling some dramatic stories, and get rid of the silliness. Because there's nothing worse than a wrestler trying to be a comedian if he's not funny.
It just sucks. And then he's trying instead of just accidentally being. Okay, so then you take Ring of Honor, WWE, and Tennessee Two Shuffle, and you throw all that together. What do we got?
Well, we got right now what we need in wrestling, I think, is mass amnesia. Because I think the fans need to forget all the headlines that they've seen and all the stories they've read for the past 15 years. And if we could find some place, maybe Gilligan's Island, where you could just find a virgin crowd. Do you remember what it was like to open up a territory?
Yes, sir.
And you had a virgin crowd, and they would lock up, and they'd get a headlock, and the people would go berserk. As Pat Patterson would say, they'd go banana.
Yes.
And there's no virgin crowds anymore. Everybody thinks they're smart, and they're critiquing the matches based on the execution of the moves rather than the telling of the physical story in the ring between two guys that have a conflict. And I'm not sure we can get away from that, which is why I think that the UFC pay-per-views and the UFC in general have become so popular, is because they're giving the old-time wrestling fans the fix that they don't get when, these guys, they walk into the locker room and they're scared. They're walking on eggshells because there's no place to go.
Yeah. What do you think about Punk going to the UFC?
Well, and once again, the two biggest pay-per-view box office attractions for the UFC in 2015 are going to be Brock Lesnar and CM Punk.
I love them. I love them.
Basically, we're looking at Gotch and Hackenschmidt on Speed Search all over again. It's professional wrestling being created in front of our eyes, but instead of taking 40 years, it's going to take 15. And
it's pretty cool.
That's cool, but at the same time, there's so many guys now in this industry that want to succeed, but they walk on eggshells because in your day, in my day, and you gave plenty of notices and sometimes didn't even give a notice, but you could go to work for one of 25 other people and you could be yourself. Now, if you don't want to play the part that they give you to play, and I think the comedy writers are the worst thing that have ever gotten in the business.
Stupid.
The people with backgrounds in reality television and writing degrees from college, that if they were, as Bill Watts used to say, if they were caught in a men's locker room, they'd be whistling Stranger in Paradise. They're trying to tell a bunch of wrestlers how to beat each other up and get over, and I don't think that works.
No, and they're young and naive, and they're listening, and they're trying their hardest, but they're getting the wrong information. I had one of them. Let me see how I say this real quick. A kid come in and he asked me, I said, this is how I go to the ring. When I first come out, I usually pause a second. Because back in the day, Jesse Ventura would have been talking about his book, Aunt Jemima, I don't know what other thing. So I just pause for a second and say, and I'd look straight at the ring, my opponent. But in my head, I'm going, okay. Then I would start to walk slow, because a man that walks slow, has either got a gun or he's real confident. Something's going on. And also, by the time I got to that apron, Jesse had to talk about me. So finally, when I got in the ring, the first thing I'd do is I'd look at the guy's boots, my opponent. Because if the toes are worn out, he's a comer. If the heels are worn out, he's a backer-upper. I got to do this, man. I got no time to say hi to you. I'm busy. This big Georgie animal gorilla is going to kill me. Well, that's because you're going in with a pure intention. The people now, they're not coming out. They're coming out, hey, how's everybody doing? Fuck that. I'm about to get killed by this big guy. That's what's missing.
But besides that, a lot of the guys, unfortunately, when 30 years ago you walked in a locker room and you'd look around the room and there would be Ric Flair and Dick Murdoch and Abdullah the Butcher and these giant, larger-than-life, and everybody was different, and everybody knew how to get themselves over, and they didn't care about worrying about somebody else. It was like, how am I going to get my match, my angle, my thing over? And the art of booking was manipulating top talent.
Absolutely.
Manipulating them into positions where they could be themselves and putting them on a trajectory for a collision course with another guy that they would draw money against.
And as you said, they had to do that over and over again.
Writing down names on a piece of paper. And by the way, did Jesse Ventura give you royalties for inventing the color commentator position?
No, he didn't.
You and Gordon Soley came before Jesse and Gorilla.
Yeah, we did, man. Holy cow. Whoosh. We were rolling then. Tell me something. What do you think about the WWE announcing they're going to finally induct Macho Man Randy Savage into the Hall of Fame?
Well, it's time, but if you'd have said 10 years ago, well, Randy Savage and Bruno Sammartino will be inducted after Drew Carey and Pete Rose, I thought, what? And you say, what?
Yeah, I was there with Drew Carey. They booed.
Yeah, well, but Savage and Bruno obviously was a no-brainer, and I'm glad they've mended those fences because these guys need to be recognized for the contributions that they make.
Yeah,
and I know you got to get publicity, but sometimes it's about, who you can sell the DVD of and who's dead but we're in their hometown and, whatever. But if it was particularly on merit, I believe that there'd be a few more guys in there before, Vince Sr.'s limo driver.
Okay, so I got one for you. That you saw. I got some heat on you at one time, like I wouldn't stop talking. You were telling me. All right. So this is back. Maybe people, I hope they'll appreciate getting on top isn't the tough part. Staying there. And one of the things which you mentioned that happened to me when I was about 17 is Greg's dad, Valentine.
Johnny
Valentine. He's coming. I'm in Houston. I was just on the first match, and I was waiting to get paid. And Johnny Valentine's the main event. And he come in the dressing room, and he just snatches me by the throat and slams me against the wall out of nowhere. And he says to me, "I can't make you believe wrestling's for real, but I sure to fucking make you believe I am."
Yes.
That's the problem. That'll cure that problem. So now we go back to you did an interview about Hogan and I having this terrible cage match in the Match of the Icons. It was a pretty good interview, too. It was a good interview. So let me tell you.
That was where I uttered the immortal phrase, Hulk Hogan is a household name, but garbage is, too, and it stinks when it gets old as well.
Yeah, you see, you did good. Now, let me explain what I had to do there. And maybe you guys will get a kick out of it because I've never told nobody. First of all, there was so much yuckiness. It was the worst part of my career, that whole WCW thing. It was an ugly piece of business. And everybody was shooting at everybody. And so I thought to myself, I said, okay. Let's have a match of the icons. Because Hogan's never beat me, boom. And I'm thinking to myself, listen, I got to beat him. I got to beat this guy. It's from WWE, and you want to bring this back in the cage. I got to beat this guy. And so it was the match of the icons. Well, I won. And if you watch the next week, Randy Savage had icon written in ink on his knuckles. Hogan was going, Bischoff, you tell them who the real... Went right under them. They never saw it coming. Then I had an icon t-shirt. Okay. So I had to do that. That was my manipulation political way of doing a Roddy. Now we come to the match that you speak of, and cage match, and we get in the cage. And when you take a look at that cage match, we get in, and the cage is 5-6 feet from the ring, and we look at it, and it's steel wires with aluminum circles, but they're not. They just roll when you go to go up them. They just little roll like your bathroom toilet paper. Okay, now wait a second. Now
that's great for climbing.
But I take all the heat, but I'm just with an explanation, Your Honor. So now also though, if you're going to fall from the cage, be nice to fall in the friggin' ring, not down on the concrete in MGM Grand. Finally, so we're trying to climb up. Now we get it from the top, and and I get it. I can't remember what you say. The old farts, right. We get on top, and I hit him, and the railing that we're sitting on, it breaks, and Hogan's going to the audience side, and I'm going to the floor side, and so that's what we had to work with. That the whole situation around that, so let me sum it up, is, they wanted with Hall, Nash, and Hogan, whoever was doing what, and you know what? I slipped one right underneath him, and I became the icon. And the match sucked, but what moron puts a cage up like that?
Well, you started that whole icon thing to where about 2 months later, Iron Mike Sharp was an icon. Everybody was an icon.
I pissed off everybody, and because they didn't see it coming. So and when I saw your interview, truth's the truth. I laughed my ass off.
Well, that's when Vince wanted to take every joust and every shot that he could, at the other side, and I said,
sure.
Well, Vince, you want me to do a promo? I'll do a promo.
Yeah, man. It's like
I can paraglide. Yeah, I can parasail. I can hang glide. I can whatever.
Listen, we got to take a break, and we'll be right back with one last segment with Mr. Jim Cornette. What a pleasure. We'll be right back. Ow! Yeehaw! Yeah, baby! We're here with Jim Cornette, learning the ins and outs and what you got to do and things that you'd never know before. We got a caller, Mike from Virginia. Hello, Mike. You there?
Yes, sir, Roddy. How you doing?
I'm Box of Fluffy Ducks. Thank you for waiting so long. I'm sorry. We got talking on a talk show with the great Jim Cornette. Yeah. What you thinking?
I was just wondering because this has never been brought up. I guess WrestleMania 10, you were the referee for Yokozuna versus Bret Hart, and clearly at the end, I get that it's entertainment. I'm not trying to insult you guys. You grab the bottom rope and Yokozuna falls, and then Bret pins Yokozuna. But it's never acknowledged that you shook the rope and Yokozuna fell. Like on TV, when it happened, was there ever like a Roddy versus Yokozuna thing that just never happened, or was that really not supposed to come off that way on TV because it never got acknowledged? It happened, and it never got brought up, ever.
So you're saying that we cheated Yokozuna and there didn't seem to be...
that's right. That's right, Roddy. You cheated. Damn you. Damn your eyes.
Yeah, It was a time, my gums were bleeding. My dog broke his tooth on a Gainsburger. Chicken ran away. I tell you, that was with Brett and Burt Reynolds had introduced us. That's where I actually became friends with him. I drove the Bandit. But you know what? I think, and I'm just going to kind of do this quick because it's a long time ago. But if I had to guess it, they needed to weigh out where, Yoko Zuna, the Jim Cornette managed, was a fine piece of talent for what he was. They only fit certain pegs, and I think that Bret Hart fit the machine much better in many different ways, and they needed a way out for Bret to soar ahead, and at the same time to keep Yokozuna as strong as they could, so they had me cheat. And why say anything about it? The deed's
and I
done.
think the announcers missed it.
That's how good I am.
Awesome. Sound good.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Thank you. Holy cow. So much to go over. And I know it's, I'm running into my last segment with Jim Cornette. Did you see Legends House? Did you get a chance to see any of that?
I did not, and there was people on there that I would like to have seen, and I love Hillbilly Jim. He's from my state, Kentucky, and I love Jimmy Hart and Gene Okerlund, but I've stayed away from a lot of wrestling, clean and sober from wrestling programming the past few years, just because after 30-something years, sometimes you just need to wring, as Ernie Ladd used to say, your brain is like a sponge, and sometimes you need to wring it out.
There you go. I love Ernie.
And I've been wringing out my brain.
I get you. I loved Ernie. Ernie was class, huh? He was a good man. Woof. He was a great man. Who was your favorite guy to manage? Who was the guy that you got along best with?
In the WWF, obviously it was Owen and Bulldog. Of course, my all-time favorite, the Midnight Express, whether it was Bob Eaton and Dennis Condrey or Bob Eaton and Stan Lane. That's when we were together every day for years and years in the car and on the planes, and you had to be friends or you killed each other.
Yeah. It's surprising how close it's hard to find somebody, but once you find somebody that will watch your back in our business in that time, that was really, really important.
Yeah, and of course, Bobby Eaton at the time was probably the best in-ring performer, just in terms of his wrestling and his working that there was, and he was plus the nicest guy in the history of wrestling. Nobody has anything bad to say about Bobby, and so we were close and still are close. And I just saw him last weekend too at the Legend Show. It's a shame the Legend shows outdraw the new shows. A lot of these, you ought to come to Charlotte, the Legends reunion, the first weekend of August every year in Charlotte. It's my favorite weekend of the year, between the fans and the boys getting together.
Yeah.
The Horsemen got together a few years ago. Rick and Arn and Ole comes every year. And
nice.
Ole Anderson paid me the greatest compliment I've ever had in the wrestling industry. He said to me one time, he said, "Cornette, I used to think you were a dumb fuck, but so many other dumb fucks have come along that are worse than you. You climbed the ladder without doing anything." And I think that's the nicest thing that Ole Anderson has ever said to anybody.
Ole Anderson. Excuse me. Very good. Ole Anderson. I learned a huge lesson. People say whatever they want about Ole, and Ole was a bully, and he was hard and all that. But he was booking Atlanta and Charlotte at the time, and, I was running hard. And so it was the first time Flair and I got together, and, it was in Richmond, and as every wrestler says, they were hanging from the rafters and whatever. And we went out and had this match for about 30 minutes, and people were screaming and like, whoa. And the way you came up in Richmond, one guy came from one way and one guy another. And the boys, as a kid, hey, what a match. And I come in the dressing room, and there's Ole sitting down. I called him Pigface because of that mole on him. And, and he's sitting down, he looks at me, he goes, "Well, that sucked." What are you talking about? "Oh, what am I supposed to bring back? You're out there like a bunch of Mexicans. Why don't you plant your feet on the ground and pretend you're a fighter?" I went, holy shit. You know what?
Well,
we did. We left it all out there.
Ole's the kind of guy that likes to start the day off with a smile to get it over with.
Yeah.
at the same time, not only a tremendously educated guy, but smart to the wrestling business. And when he was booking Atlanta and booking Charlotte and a main event heel in both places in the late 70s, he was making $250,000 a year, which is like $750,000 to $800,000 in today's money.
Yes.
And you can't argue with that level of success that he had to do night in and night out. I had my issues with Ole over time, but
I love them.
But one time we're sitting at the Great American Bash '86. We're sitting in the locker room, I think in the Norfolk Scope, and me and the Midnight Express were wrestling Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, and Baby Doll.
Yeah.
And we were above Ole and Arn Anderson against the Rock and Roll Express on the card, and he sat there and he looked at me and he said, I never thought that I'd sweat and I'd bleed and I'd do all this in this business for 20 years so some dumb bitch and some fat manager could make more money than me. And I came back and said, but Ole, I'd just like to thank you for bleeding and sweating and putting all that work in so I could come along and make more money. And when you jousted with him, he kind of got over with him. He liked it.
Yeah, you needed to fight back with Ole.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think many people know this. I'm not sure where you were at this time when I was down with Gordon Soley, but that's the first time they were going to take over the world. And it was Barnett, and they had signed me to a contract, and I was told about it. And the fellow in Chicago that was Barnett's friend, he didn't want Barnett crossing over because of Vern. All I'm saying is, back then, that was the first time that they were going to, the infamous were going to try to take over the world. And I had a contract, and then, I was a little out of hand too. And when the guy out of Chicago backed off, doggone Barnett, he fired me and blackballed me and turned me into the IRS. And
well, at least he wasn't vindictive about it.
No, but that's how I got to Puerto Rico and Costa Rico, and that's where the Flair stories come in. But did you know Barnett at all? Did you ever?
Yeah, I got to meet Jim when he came back from working for Vince after they had the kerfluffle, and he came down to be an advisor for Turner Broadcasting, and he was on that infamous booking committee. And at the time, one of the most revolutionary names, maybe one of the 3 or 4 most powerful guys ever in wrestling in its entire history, and an unlikely guy, but he had all the political connections. He knew everybody. He could get TV anywhere, and he was the old silver fox. And at the time, he was pretty much going to take the Turner Broadcasting consultant check and agree a lot, but there were still flashes of that sardonic wit.
Yes.
And
my boy.
But you're talking about a guy that invented studio wrestling, for heaven's sake. He invented most of that. That's actually where I got my middle initial, James E. Cornette, because when I first went to Atlanta, it was right after Ole had booted him out, more or less. And and they saw Jim Cornette on the booking sheet, and it was so close to Jim Barnett, they said, "Oh, Jimsy." And I said, "Yes, my boy." And from then on, I became James E. Cornette, to the point where the first WWF contract that they wrote me from the office in Stamford, they had my legal name as James E. Cornette.
What you got to do to stay alive.
I said, no, it's a rib on Jim Barnett, and this was the 90s. They didn't even remember him. They didn't. I was working in the office in Stamford. I came back after lunch and sat down at my desk, and the secretary comes in and says, Jim, you've had a phone call from a Harvey Race.
Harvey Race?
Yeah.
Okay. That's back when there was a code. The code is dead.
Yeah.
The code is dead. There's still someone. I still can't speak about it. I still have trouble with it. When you got beat up as much as we did, they beat me. They beat me.
What I always enjoyed about your promos is when you wouldn't say, I'm going to work with so-and-so. You wouldn't even say, I'm going to wrestle so-and-so. You'd say, I'm going to fight so-and-so.
Yeah. That was a purposeful choice. I dumbed the language down a bit back then because it was like Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher. We're going to rip your lungs out, and I would start to think about it, and they weren't really going to do that. And so when you got to the arena, how come you're not ripping his lungs out? And so I started thinking in the interviews, well, wait a second, whatever you say in the interview, you better go do it, because then when you say it, they'll come and see you. So if you say blood's going to flow, blood better flow. And so then you get that you know, it's part to keep getting over in territory. You got to back up what you say in the interview, and you got to know the interview's got to match the match.
Yeah. Imagine that, actually giving people what they paid to see. There's a concept.
Thank you. You made it so simple. 5 minutes, and you put it in a sentence. Thank you, Jim.
Imagine if you went to see the next Star Wars movie, and all of a sudden a mime troupe came on stage. What, you know what?
I only got 5 minutes left. Okay, some guys, what do you think, like Triple H? How you think the guy is going to do as a successor to Vince? Or if Vince goes down, what do you think the company's going to do?
Well, Vince McMahon will never die, for one thing.
That's
because,
true.
You know, he would have to be human to do that.
That's right.
You know, Triple H, student of the game, he's a great worker, but as I've said many times, and I'm sorry if I hurt his feelings, Triple H is the guy that works with the guy that draws the money.
Yeah, got it. Good carpenter.
Yes, any jackass can kick a barn down. Takes a carpenter to build one.
Yes, sir.
But he's the guy that works with the guy. The Triple H versus Austin, Triple H versus Rock, Triple H versus Foley. Need I go on?
Back in the day, that it's a word that they won't even understand. Back in the day, you know, a good carpenter was worth his weight in gold.
Because he built your house.
Yes, sir. And you know, he would get Hogan up there or Schnook up there or whatever. Interesting. Kevin Nash.
I've taken a lot of heat, possibly from Nash himself, for saying the guy had 6 moves, but he has, I will admit, made more money with 6 moves than anybody in the history of wrestling.
Gotcha.
As a matter of fact, I was there in TNA. They paid him for a year and a half. He wrestled once.
Maybe he's the smartest of us all.
I think he's a hypnotist.
How about, what do you think on the roster now? We got Randy Orton Jr.
Well, Randy, actually, we trained him here in Louisville in Ohio Valley Wrestling. We got him when he had 8 matches over at that little small wrestling club in St. Louis.
He did a great job.
And Randy was, you know, he had it in his genes. He got his body in shape, got his head right, had a few bobbles being a young man. But
sure.
He is really, you know, if you wanted to start a wrestling promotion from scratch, we trained Cena too. I mean, he started in California, but we had him for about a year over here. So you want to start with guys like Cena and Orton. And Cena's taken a bunch of shit from people. It's not his fault they book him like Superman.
You know what? I think John Cena has done one hell of a job.
Hey,
he walks out there and does what he needs to do.
As a human being, there's nobody better than John Cena. There's nobody more motivated, nobody more determined. He's really he returned a lot of favors for Danny Davis down here in OVW, and also he's a great heel too. He came to us as a heel, and I thought he was going to be the next Ric Flair because he was such a good heel and such a great heel promo, and he's never got the chance to show that.
Wow.
And I wish that
Very
someday
cool.
that would happen just for the fan in me.
Yeah. How about
And I'll tell you something about your old cohort, Bob Orton Jr. I have on my shelf in my memorabilia collection the cast that Bob wore on his wrist at WrestleMania that he autographed to me and thanked me for helping train Randy.
Really?
And that's a prized possession, too.
God, Bobby Orton's the only guy who had a broken arm for 2 years. Bobby just put the damn cast on. Come on, I'll tape it. Just come on. God damn it, you know. I wrestled Bobby's dad. I wrestled Senior in Kansas City when I was like 15, 16 years old. He just scared me to death. What's that? Brian Daniels.
I love Brian. I knew him as Brian Danielson, Daniel Bryan. He's got whatever name. He's a great kid, and he's part of the new generation. They really they take the business so seriously.
Yeah.
And I worked with him some in Ring of Honor. I think he's a great kid, and I'm happy for the success he's had, and hope that now that he's getting back from that injury, he'll do even better.
Dean Ambrose.
Dean, I've never met Dean Ambrose. I'm a fan of his because from what I have watched, because everybody points out he has some elements of Terry Funk. He has some elements of, well, of course, Dick Slater thought he was Terry Funk.
Oh, didn't he ever?
But, I think Dick Slater was probably in Funk's home movies.
Or a stand-in, anyway. Dick Slater, I mean, he copied him to the T, to the point where it worked against him.
Yeah, they started thinking, well, we could just spend another $100 and get Terry.
Yes, that's right. You know, it's strange with Dolph Ziggler.
Dolph Ziggler, we trained him here in Louisville. I hate to keep sounding like a broken record. Is under the name Nick Nemeth. He was a great wrestler in Ohio, in college in Ohio, and he was one of those guys that you knew it was going to take him a while to find himself. Mechanically, he was perfect. But once he found himself, I saw him work with The Miz and lead The Miz by the nose through a match here a few months ago. And I thought I was looking, I didn't know whether I was seeing Kurt Hennig or what. His body language, his facials, his attitude. As a matter of fact, Ziggler probably in the ring now of the guys I've seen is my favorite.
Ziggler? Yeah, I'm Mr. Perfect. Good, baby Jesus. We're at the WCW, and I don't know, something like they want Sting to come through the bottom of the ring, whatever it is, and they have to have 6 wrestlers underneath the ring, and so before the people come in, I don't know, 6 guys go under the ring, you know, they're going to be there all night, and Mr. Perfect goes to the bathroom and has a Constitution in a bag and slips down underneath the ring, and, hey, you guys all right? And isn't, can I get you anything? Boom. Or just tears the bag a bit and leaves it, and he's gone, the people come. They were so mad. Oh, baby Jesus.
Hey, Kurt Hennig was when he was working for Vern in the AWA. He's getting on an airplane, and Stan Lane is right behind him. And Stan Lane's wearing the Zubaz, right? So Kurt gets in his seat, and Stan is putting his bag in the overhead, and Hennig knows that Stan has no underwear on, right? So as soon as Stan's got both of his hands propped up on that bag and he's leaning over this businessman in a suit and tie, Hennig pantses him. And the Zubaz come down, and there's Stan's dick just flopping in this guy's face. This guy's screaming, no!
Les, what do you think about Sting finally coming into the WWE?
I think it's great because, you know, the last guy, the last holdout, but he needs to finish his career as long as he's been in the business, as much as he's meant to everybody. He needs to finish it on the biggest stage possible. Yeah. The only thing I don't want to see Sting versus Undertaker, and the fans, if this is one of those matches, Roddy, you'll understand this, that people think they want to see until they see it. Yeah, and then they realize they didn't want to see it because who's going to win?
Yeah, I hear you.
Sting can't lose, but Undertaker can't lose again. I don't think he should have lost the first time. And we trained Brock here in Louisville, too.
I would have thought the Undertaker.
The underwear.
Yeah, and his underwear. I would have thought that he would have gone undefeated to WrestleMania 30 and packed it in.
It was, you know, that's one of those Vince reflexes that just he got up that day and decided, yes, this is what's good, but
got it.
It took the air out of the room, I think.
I think so too. Nobody. But in any case, we love them all, and I've had now a chance an honor to be with you. I have a lot of respect for you. You speak very intelligently about what's going on, and you know your stuff.
Roddy, thank you so much. I've been honored that you asked me to be on this program from the first time I saw you 35 years ago beating the snot out of some mark in Cincinnati.
Thank
Until
you.
today, I thank you very much. And just remember, JimCornette.com for all your Cornette needs.
So that's JimCornette.com. I love you with all my heart. Let's do it again sometime. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you.
I can be had anytime. I have been many times.
God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Jim Cornette. That's a lot of fun. Holy cow. I got to go now. 2015 is going to be a great year. A lot of stuff going on. I'm going to die with a sword in my hand. I ain't rotting away on a little rascal. So, till next time, I got a couple of guests I don't want to tell you just yet because I don't know if I can get them both in the same room. They want me to do a movie with Mr. T. I know. Was SWAT going to produce it? All right, I got to go. They're giving me all kinds of signs. Some ain't good. Blowing kisses and little fingers. And listen, if you're down and you're sick and you're not feeling good, I get it on Twitter. R_Roddy_Piper. I feel people that are having tough times. You know what? Get up. Take a deep breath, stand up. It's all in the spirit, guys. Take a deep breath, stand up. I beat cancer, I beat electrocution. I beat a lot of things. But the way I did it is because of you. Because you were always there for me. I'm here for you. Stand up, boom. Seize the world, take it. I love you with all my heart. CM Punk, Rock, we had Jim Cornette. Baby Jesus, I will see you next week. Ow!